Welcome to the law, your money, and you. I'm Roberta Saphire. I'm an attorney in Sharon, and this is...
I'm Camille Barron, a financial coordinator also in Sharon, Massachusetts.
And this is...
Jerry Saphire. I am, amongst other things, I am the husband of this beautiful gal here on the right, who earlier identified herself as Roberta Saphire.
And this is Behind the Scenes. Behind the Scenes with the law, your money, and you is usually with just Camille and myself. But Jerry's on our advisory board, and so that we wouldn't have to move from the previous thing, we invited Jerry to join us since he acts as a photographer, and he is right on tap and helps us all the time.
That's right. Maybe we could ask by starting, we could start by asking you, what does the advisory board do? We actually have an advisory board because we're a 501c3 corporation.
Right.
And we...
Nonprofit.
We have the show, but the show is just one small part of everything we do.
Right.
So we do have a board.
Yeah, and we do good things. We do good things.
Yes.
You're asking, what does the advisory board do? Well, okay, the show consists of you two who are out there informing the public with all the great guests that you bring on, and they are extremely informative people, and they help people get through life easier with all the different aspects of life that they have to deal with, whether they're legal problems or real estate problems or probate problems or medical problems, and that's a great thing that you do. And that takes a lot just to do that. So it's a good idea to have some other people that are trying to help you formulate some other things, maybe some ideas, maybe have some ideas about just possibly even having some fundraiser sometime and dealing with all of that that's involved, so that you don't have to do it and you can do what you are designed to do and do best. Get out here and talk to people and interview them and bring information to the table for the public.
And that's a good point that you make, because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. I mean, the doing this in the studio, we don't have to pay for that. But we do a lot of other things, and we do rely on donations and grants. And in order to do that, you can't just wave a wand and expect the money to flow. You have to raise the funds.
Yeah, and we have people who are very interested in what we're doing, and they care. We have the expressions care and show that you care. But that other one, Pat McDermott, the Register of Probate, he says if you have something of value, how did he put it? You have something of value.
If you're given something of value, you must.
You have a moral
obligation
to share it.
To share it with other people.
That's just what we do.
That's exactly what we do.
We do with the police officers or our friends. We just we had visited. Well, we finished our Easton book, which is fantastic. We're working on a Braintree book, plus many others. But there's a little girl that goes around to all the police stations in Massachusetts.
Yes, she has a Facebook page called She Loves Police. When she was 4 years old, she fell and she had a seizure. And when she woke up, there were all these policemen around her. And ever since then, that made such a huge impact on her that she really loves the police. And she told her mother that she wanted to visit every police station in Massachusetts.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
So, people talk about the police, there's a policeman, stay away. But police officers really are our friends, and that's what our major project is.
Yes.
About making coloring books and activity books for children so that they'll grow up liking the police instead of not liking the police. And they are a great bunch.
They are, and the reason that we focused on children is because they're most impressionable when they're still children. That's when a lot of people's attitudes are formed. It comes maybe from the parents, it might come from friends, but the last thing we need is for people to be afraid of the police.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of people do grow up, even if it's an unconscious fear, they grow up being afraid of the police. And in some cases it turns to violence, and that doesn't help anybody.
No. Well, we're doing our share on a new thing, and this is Jerry want to pitch in on this is another thing. We talk about the cyberbullying and this, and one of the people in the studio said that the Eversource, which is the electric company for here, called up and was going to turn off their electricity in the studio if they didn't pay their bill, and yet it wasn't really them calling. He's laughing. He got one. The IRS usually calls up, but they don't call up. But there's another one. They're putting this out in the middle schools. 6 tips for managing smartphone and social media for your children. I mean, who had that years ago with the smartphone? As Saphire, as you're lovingly called, what do you have to say about smartphone media? You wanted to originally talk about businesses.
I wish I knew an awful lot about more about smartphones than I do, but that's an unfortunate matter of being born many, many years ago. When the older you are today, the less you know about a lot of the technology today. But I do and can appreciate this. Social media is it started out a form, I think, of like advertising in a way. Back in my day, the traditional methods of advertising were radio, TV, magazines, newsprint. And if you had a product, it didn't matter how good the product was. If nobody knew about the product and the name of it and what to buy and all of that, and you build up a little story around it, you can have a great product, but you're not going to make a lot of sales. A lot of success in businesses is how do you market. And today, social media is, I won't say use the language taken over, but it's darn close to it in a way, because it's possible to market your product without having to spend an awful lot of money to do it, if you know how to do it. And I'm no expert in that, because that takes a lot of knowledge of technology, and you almost got to like grow up with social media, but recognize it for what it is. That is what it is. That can be accountable for successes that people could never have otherwise. And you have people today. You can have companies like General Electric, IBM. Those were the companies that they had all the money in the world with General Motors. You remember the old saying, "What's good for General Motors is good for the country." Well, that was then, but now with social media, you have people and companies today like Google and Facebook and some of those others that they have so many billions of dollars. They're even bigger than some of these other companies that have been around for 100 years. I'm talking, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking General Electric. I think that they are the only company in existence right now that was on the original big stock exchange back out. It was started back in like the late 1800s.
Really?
They're the only one.
Yeah.
But now I don't think the monies that General Electric has is anywhere near the monies that companies have that have started and processed through social media. And you have I'm thinking of companies like Tesla that was started by this fellow Elon Musk, and he started with that original PayPal, I think it was. He, brilliant in all this technology, he was able to amass a fortune and sell it for God knows how many umpteen millions or billions.
Who owns PayPal?
And he was only
now?
in it.
Do you know who owns PayPal now?
It was
Google?
sold. He sold
No, I know,
it and
but
went
who
on to
owns
other
it?
companies like SpaceX and stuff.
Who owns it now?
PayPal, that was, well, I'm not sure who owns it
Is
now,
it
but it
Google?
was sold. The point of the matter is, if you're in business today, you can't be in it without immersing yourself into these other things, because they're a form of advertising and marketing. That's what's going to make your business. So to me, that's obviously it does all these other things. It brings the whole world closer. Can you imagine being able to talk and see people in China and Russia and all these other countries in the world And of course, it costs you through what you pay for iPhones and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but there's no direct charges like there used to be. What a world
Yeah.
we live
Well-
in today.
Well, getting through business climates, I mean, there's a whole new thing now that the business climate, what kind of entity should you form? Should you be there's the subchapter rest is the yes. You know what I wanted to talk about? I remember when I came here, I wanted
Well, you
to
ought to
say, I
explain
wanted,
what a subchapter S
well,
corporation is if you're
it's
going to
a
bring
farm.
that subject
Well,
up.
I'm bringing it up and I'm dropping it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just a format. There's
Yeah.
different formats, and that's the law, and we have brought that here. But one of the things, we didn't have the opportunity to get right away we're looking to have an attorney. We're going to have an attorney and accountant on at the same time, and
The new
that'll
tax
be good.
laws.
Yeah. Well, because people like you talked once about what to do, what type of business, and this and that. But wouldn't it be nice to have an attorney and accountant? An attorney would say, well, that's the best thing to do. There's no liability. But the accountant will say, by the time you get through paying for it, you won't need it. So different things. But I wanted, because Camille is in insurance, and we had the register of probate on him. Part of probate is advice on estate planning and this and that. And we had talked too that in today's world you need an advocate. So there's advocates, attorneys. Attorney is an advocate, somebody who represents you. But in medical today, with the way the hospitals are, the doctors, etc., you need actually a money planner, somebody to plan your money, investments. They're actually an advocate too. But you were in insurance. You're still in insurance.
Right,
Insurance. There. What do you do? I wanted to talk about an advocate. What you're doing now, because I find that fascinating, and it's all new. And I've had people stop me and say, this they should have an advocate. And I go, that's what Camille is into. So tell us
Well,
about
I'll give you an example. It wasn't too long ago. I work for in health advocacy, which is really to help people who have medical conditions. Might be somebody who is an elderly person who has different diagnoses and maybe doesn't have family around. So the company will assist them by taking them to the doctor, helping them coordinate their medications, coordinating home care if needed. But a very important part of healthcare today is insurance. And unfortunately, the way it should be is you have health needs, and then your insurance helps you financially to take care of those health needs. But what actually happens today, unfortunately, is the insurance dictates what kind of medical care you can get. So we had a woman not long ago who went to the hospital emergency room, and whatever the condition was, it ended up she needed to stay in the hospital. She had sepsis. She was in bad shape. And
What's sepsis?
it's
It's one thing I don't have. I don't think.
no, I don't think you do. But the whole body gets infected. Something gets
poor
into the
thing.
blood, and it's
It's like
not
toxic.
yes.
Oh, the poor thing.
So anyway, they said they were going to keep her in the hospital, and she was there for 9 days. And later on, when she got the explanation of benefits, the explanation of benefits that you get from the insurance company,
Oh,
it says
yeah.
this is what we've paid, this is what we're not paying.
And sign here. If you want to
Yeah.
look at it, sign the release form.
And
if you don't sign the release form, they won't look at you.
She saw that the claim, meaning the hospital visit, was denied. The full amount wasn't going to be paid for. It was going to be a lesser amount. And it turns out that she was admitted to the hospital, but she should have been just kept there for observation. Now, you remember we talked about this.
Yeah.
If you're in a hospital and you stay overnight, unlike the old days, you were admitted to the hospital. And if you have Medicare Part A covers hospitals and other types of inpatient care, and it covers it at a higher rate than Part B Medicare, which is outpatient and doctor's visits. So if you're in the hospital for observation, the bottom line is you get less. The insurance covers less. And the purpose of keeping her there for observation was supposedly because she didn't really need to be admitted. But the whole idea was that they were going to cover less. So
Was she told that in advance?
no,
They never tell
no.
you.
In fact, you're supposed to be told, and that's one of the new rules now. You have to tell the person.
But if somebody's in distress, how are they going to?
How are they going to know, right?
How are they going to absorb all this?
Who would think to say, well, am I going to be here for observation or am I being admitted? Most people wouldn't. So there's a lot of
Who's going to ask that?
there's a lot of dissension, and there's a lot that's being done to correct the
While
problem.
you brought this up, that leads me to talk on an aspect that seems to take place with hospitalization and medical world in general, and that is, I can understand why she might not be on top of it from a financial standpoint, because money is never brought up. Just stop to think about it. You have some kind of an ailment, it's a heart problem, it's a kidney problem, it's what's this or that. Nobody ever shop price compares with a medical technique like they do with everything else.
Everything else.
It doesn't make any difference what it is.
Right.
On the outside of that,
Yeah.
price has some play in the equation, because if you can't afford it, you can't have it. It's that simple.
Exactly.
So this doesn't surprise me at all. It's a kind of a nuance of difference between the two situations, the observation and the actual hospitalization, but people don't think of money anyway.
No,
when they're in the
especially when it's a
hospital.
life or
So why
death
should
situation.
she get the difference?
Right.
Well, that's where Camille
that's the
comes
whole
in.
point.
She's
So-
an advocate.
Yeah,
Somebody
you
would
need
call
that,
up and
yeah.
say,
So I had to call
And
the
explain.
hospital and the insurance company, and anyway, as it turned out, they ended up writing the amount off because they realized that they were wrong.
But who listened to you? Who did you call? The bookkeeping department? I mean, who do you call it?
Oh, I had to speak with
the
the
hospital.
hospital billing department and the insurance company, both.
And they wrote it off.
Yes, they wrote it off.
Yeah.
but what if the woman didn't have Camille Barron to
Yeah.
make the call for her?
Then she might have thought she might have had the ability to make these calls herself. I don't know.
She might not have above it. She probably would have said, I have to pay it.
Right. So the whole idea is that when it comes to your health, it should not be that insurance dictates the quality of care, but it does.
But it
It's
does.
unfortunate. Financial means and insurance do. So my role in this whole advocacy is to really focus on insurance advocacy and financial advocacy, to watch out.
Fascinating.
What are they being billed correctly? There are codes. They have coding that determines the charge, and sometimes the codes might not be right. So they might be being billed for a code for a higher amount. than
So
it should be.
who are the culprits in this? Is it the hospitals or the insurance companies?
Well, it varies. I mean,
Both.
The original source of of putting down what the procedure was that was done is the hospital or the doctor's office. So generally that's what it would be, and then it's going to be submitted to the insurance company. But you have to follow the money or follow the lack of money, the whole trail.
I'll tell you though, you mentioned about the
Fascinating.
financial aspect of it and the insurance aspect of it, but there's really more than that when it comes to advocacy for somebody who's hospitalized. My father died how many years ago? About 10 years ago now?
Well,
Is it?
he's Pierce is named after him, and Pierce is going to be 13 in June.
Is it that
So your
long?
father's gone at least 14 years.
Wow. Well, anyways,
Time
I
flies,
remember
huh?
one thing specifically why I bring it up, and that is during one of the times that he was in the hospital, he was laid up with one thing, or another. He had occasion one time to be quite concerned about something that he didn't think was right at the time, the way he was being taken care of and all.
Well,
And-
tell our audience first. The man was the chief pharmacist at the Quincy Hospital, so he had a built-in advocacy. So if the nurse
Yeah.
handed him something, he would look at it and say, "This pill, doctor wouldn't prescribe something like
Right.
that
Oh,
for
yeah.
me."
Yeah, and
That's
he had,
what
He had a
happened.
better shot to protect
That's why he lived so
himself
long,
than-
to over
Oh.
than,
100.
than anybody else. Yeah.
Yeah,
As
he
a matter of fact, just a side note, because I think it's kind of interesting. When he retired after running the old Quincy City Hospital for 20 years as the chief. He knew all these doctors that he worked with at that time. He couldn't bear, after all his whole life doing just one thing with that, running a pharmacy. One time he owned a few pharmacies, but pharmaceuticals, that was his whole life. He couldn't bear having to give up his license when he retired, because if you don't keep current on things, you have to give up your license. You can't service the public. For the next 30 years, until he died at 100 years old, he took correspondence courses with the Mass College of Pharmacy. And when he died, he was fully licensed, registered to be able to get a job and serve the public as a pharmacist if he so chose.
He had his mind.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyways, the point that I was getting at was, he had some concern about the pills and this and that, and he wanted to let them know that it could be a problem with him in terms of some of the side effects that it might have and all, because he had other alternatives that would have been better and all. And he'd mentioned it to maybe like one of the nurses or something, because that's where it starts. The doctors aren't there. You never see a doctor. They're even in the operating room. Well, that's it. You see the nurses.
Yeah.
But he was concerned about it, and I had said to him, well, let me go up to the counter and search out the nurse, and I'll go over it with her and everything. He was concerned. And I think that this is the case with a lot of people, a lot of patients that are in hospitals waiting for their turn to be handled and worked on, by the nurses and everything else. He was concerned about, as important as it was, not making that a whole big thing about it, because then they might not take care of him the way, and let him, you don't want to go, he's like kind of like a pain. You know what I mean? He's kind of like a pain, and he'll be like sloughed off to the side type of a thing. So most people who are hospitalized don't have the benefit of having their attending doctor offer that advocacy service, just in case they end up in a hospital for some reason. I had no problem in going up and trying to talk to the nurses to get him the attention that he wanted. But what interested me, and I've never forgotten it, is the way that he felt as a patient in the hospital. That he had to be careful about not having them think he's a nuisance, because then they wouldn't give him the level of attention that he felt that he should have at the hospital. So I had to be careful. I went up and I got him what he wanted and everything, but it was kind of, I was kind of like checked in the sense that don't go too heavy on them. I don't want them to be angry at me. And I'm thinking that's a hell of a way for
it is.
And that was his hospital too.
Yeah.
That was the hospital.
And it's too bad. I mean, a lot of the time that comes from just being understaffed.
Yeah, well, that's
the
true.
nursing staff has so many things, and they might not have the capacity to attend to things.
But my
as much
point
as they would
is
like.
that patient advocacy is an important thing to have as a presence in hospitals, and maybe there should be some rules or regulations about making it known very, very clearly that patients are entitled to hospital advocates. I think there are some people that maybe volunteer for it or
do
whatever.
Hospitals have advocates?
They do.
They
Yes.
do?
But-
Hospitals
At no
have
charge?
Yes, hospitals have them, and even the insurance companies have them. The challenge about that, though, is that if they're working at the hospital and there's a dispute with a patient, whose side are they going to be on?
Hospital.
Yeah,
So
because
that's
they're in
not
the middle.
really
Yeah, they're in the
truly
middle.
a patient advocate.
Yeah.
A patient advocate
something?
is someone who's
Right,
independent.
independent, right.
That's like the courts. Like if you need an attorney and you can't afford one, the court will appoint one. But they'll appoint, what do they call it, a public defender.
But he's still independent.
Yeah,
least.
but it's a public defender, and the probate court has volunteers too. But like, you're not a volunteer. You're the real deal. That's like we
Yeah.
have our doctor, but you would be the real deal. How would somebody find somebody like you? Would they say to the hospital, like, would you have like your name in the hospital if anybody's interested, or in
No.
the probate court?
No, they would have to really realize that there is such a thing as a.
But
an
so many
advocate.
people don't until it's too late.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so like, where would you, how would you let these people know that somebody like you is out there?
A lot of times.
Because there's other people besides you.
Yeah, a lot of times it comes from referrals from their financial advisors or estate planning
Right.
attorneys. That's oftentimes where
Yeah,
it comes
isn't that
from.
interesting?
Yeah.
How about from doctors?
It hasn't been that
Uh-huh.
much from doctors.
Isn't that interesting? I would think that
I think it would be-
doctors-
it would
'cause
be-
doctors, I know, like our doctors, every now and then you get something which says weight loss group for this, or how to relieve tension. So and so will be giving a 13-week course on something like that. I bet there's more of that. Just like there's more cell phones and things like that. That's very interesting. So you're doing a good service.
Well, I
Plus,
mean, I think we've all experienced it in our families where we've had someone
Oh,
who
yeah.
might. I know that I always had to be speaking for my
yeah.
older relatives,
Yeah.
asking the questions and things like that. I remember when my mother was in the hospital for the very last time, she was admitted from the emergency room on a weekend, and first thing Monday morning, the discharge office is in her room talking about discharge, and the doctor hadn't even seen her yet. The cardiologist hadn't gone. I said, "Are you serious?
Oh.
The doctor hasn't
Whoa.
even seen her
but
yet."
they let her stay for the
Yeah.
weekend,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
I remember my father died in 1962, but I remember when he was in the hospital, and he said to me, and this many years ago, he used to say they dope you up on weekends because they don't have the staff. Isn't that funny? So he
believe it.
knew it too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, isn't that funny? Even back then,
Yeah.
They did that.
exactly.
that's so
Yeah.
funny. But anyway, we're into, believe
You're
it or
into
not,
it.
this was great. We're
Yeah.
into You've Got to Be Kidding. So You've Got to Be Kidding. What can we say that You've Got to Be Kidding? We are just doing so great. We have, we're on our second row of activity coloring books.
Second edition already.
Yes, second
Sec-
edition.
oh, yeah.
We're still doing the first edition, where we have new students that can draw. They don't even have to draw. They're doing. We added a lot of pages. We got the rhyme, things that rhyme. More and more personalized with the pictures of the police. And one thing that the police say, the police chief said to me, imagine his daughter saying, "My dad is in the book," and they love it. They absolutely love it. I mean, it's just a wonderful, 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 wonderful thing. But anyway, it's a nice thing that we do.
And we have it in how many towns now? Police departments?
14,
14.
but we got requests of about 10 more. But it's slow because each one's individualized, and each one that we do is the best.
It always gets
It-
better, right?
It
gets
keeps
better and better.
getting better, but for that particular police station, it's the best. I mean, we just personalize it. We bring them onto the pages, the real life, and they all seem to be so good looking.
I noticed that. Yeah, they are. I know. What is it
Aren't they?
about that?
I don't know. They're just nice, and it's just maybe it's the uniform. Is that it?
Yeah. Well, we
Even-
had a
even
police.
without the uniform.
We had a nice police officer from Sharon on our show.
Oh
he
God,
was
was
great.
he great?
He was just great.
Just great. We're going to wrap it up. He was so great, George.
Yeah.
George was in the first book. George,
Yeah.
we got a picture of George with a little girl who goes around. We'll make sure George gets in the second book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it's
You always
my
have
pleasure.
a lot.
I always enjoy
add.
coming up and
Well,
Yeah.
we can confess to our audience that we didn't even have this planned.
No,
We
but
didn't
was
have it
good.
planned that Jerry Saphire would be our guest, but he graciously agreed when we asked him.
Yeah, he can just talk and make sense, which is wonderful.
He's got the gift.
Yeah, he's got the gift, his talent, and he does good work too. He's very thorough.
Yeah.
Anything that he does, it's thorough, and he might, you might say, "Oh, I didn't even think of that."
Yeah. Yes.
Whereas I just like rush through.
Good balance.
Yeah.
So I want to thank our viewers and thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, and thank you, Camille.
And you too. We just, again, as we always say, we appreciate your watching the show, and we welcome any feedback that you have. If you have more questions about what we talked about, please let us hear from
Our
you.
latest thing is teaching 8 to 10-year-olds how to get a good, strong handshake
Right.
for the future.
Yeah.
Parents like that.
Right.
Yeah, so remember.
So let us hear from you,
yeah.
because remember, this is your show. The law, your money, and you.
you.